It is now my pleasure to introduce our MC for this morning's event, TV, film, and theater star, actor, director, and writer, Mike Burstyn.
Thank you, and shalom. It's a great honor for me to be back here at the museum to join the community for this annual Yom HaShoah ceremony. I'd like to ask all of you who are not seated yet, please take your seats. And it's my pleasure now to welcome Hannah Mabuni, who will join us and lead us in the national anthem of the United States and of Israel. If you'll please rise.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Od balevav penima nefesh Yehudi obmiya ulfatei mitzrach kadima ayin letzion tzofia. Od lovda tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, liotam chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Liotam chofshi be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Thank you, Hannah. That was beautiful. Good morning, and welcome to Holocaust Museum LA's 32nd annual Yom HaShoah commemoration ceremony. My name is Guy Lipa, and I'm the board chair of Holocaust Museum LA. As the grandson of Holocaust survivors, Yom HaShoah has always been a very profound and solemn day for our family. It's a day when people all over the world pause to commemorate the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust, as well as the heroism, resistance, and perseverance of the Jewish people. Its observance serves to renew our commitment to never forget, to speak out against antisemitism, which is sadly more rampant than ever, to honor our beloved survivors, and to fight against all forms of hatred and otherism. I would like to ask the many Holocaust survivors in attendance today to wave your hand or stand if you are able, so that we may recognize your courage, your strength, and your wisdom. We are deeply grateful for how generously you give your time to educate students and visitors about the Holocaust and your hope for the future. You are always at the heart of our work, and your message will continue to be a fundamental part of our educational programs. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge and show compassion for innocent civilian lives lost in Gaza and acknowledge the survivors and victims of identity-based violence around the world, past and present, including those suffering in Haiti, Artsakh, Sudan, Ukraine, and Afghans in Pakistan, and so many more. Our community is devastated by the events of October 7th and the glorification of Hamas and violence against Jews. We are angry and we are scared as we witness the normalization of Jew hate and the vast rise of anti-Semitism around the globe, permeating college campuses nationwide and right here in our backyards in Los Angeles. Recently, the president of LAUSD School Board, the elected official with the highest responsibility for educating over 600,000 young Angelenos, in her official capacity, sent out a voice message to every parent in her district, blaming Israel's actions in Gaza as the reason for the rise in anti-Semitism domestically. It is our democratic privilege and right to criticize the policies of a government and to push for material change when we feel there is injustice. But blanketed blame on an entire nation and people, in essence blaming Jews for the anti-Semitism that is being perpetrated against them, further exasperates the anti-Semitic trope that Jews are a problem and fans the flame of hate towards the Jewish community. Let's be clear, anti-Semitism exists in America and continues to fester. The war in Gaza is just the latest excuse in a millennia of excuses to act upon that deeply seated hatred. As the father of 2 young boys, I'm terrified by the conversations my wife and I are having. Sorry. I imagine similar to the conversations my great-grandparents must have been having in the 1930s about what we would do as a family and where we could go if things keep getting worse. Excuse me. I'm heartened, though, in these dark times to see so many of us uniting to support our work to inspire humanity through truth. Never again is now. This is not a time for our community to lose our humanity. This is a time for us to lean into our humanity, to reject callous and simplistic narratives designed to stoke division and further demonize one another, and to reach out and break the divide of hate through education and partnership. This is why I'm so proud to work closely with our museum staff, board of directors, dedicated volunteers, and incredible docents who are on the front lines every day teaching students and visitors about the critical lessons and continued relevance of the Holocaust, to ensure the truth prevails and to secure a more dignified and humane world for future generations. We know that education is our greatest catalyst for change. One of the museum's founding members, Jonah Goldrich, once said, "It's important to teach the young generation about the Holocaust. The world wants to forget the biggest horror mankind ever created, the murder of 6 million Jews by a country that was at the time considered the most cultured and enlightened in the world." We share Jonah's charge when he said, "I'm fighting against forgetting." For me, it's not just to honor the memory of my grandparents, but also to secure the future for my boys. I want to acknowledge several special guests in attendance today. Please stand when I call your name. Please hold all applause for the end. Deputy Consul General of Japan, I apologize, Nishogi Aoshima. Deputy Consul General of Israel, Israel Bakar. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. Consul General of France, Julie Duhat-Bedeau. Los Angeles City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto. Former Los Angeles City Controller Ron Galperin. Los Angeles Somehow, Katie, your name got left off this list, but I want to, councilwoman and our councilwoman for the district and a great partner and supporter of this museum. We could not be doing any of this without you, so I thank you. Katie Yarslavsky. Former Los Angeles City Controller Ron Galperin, Los Angeles Deputy Mayor Jacqueline Hamilton, LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, also an amazing partner of our great museum. Consul General of Lithuania, Laima Jurvishieni, Rabbi Steve Leader and Rabbi Susan Nanis from Wilshire Boulevard Temple, LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, Deputy Consul General of the Czech Republic Karol Pazorek, Consul General of Spain Juan Carlos Sanchez, Consul General of Germany Andre Sass, Consul General of Ireland Marcella Smith, Consul General of Hungary Tamás Sellers, LA City Council Member Katie Yarslavsky, and California Assembly Member Rick Chavez-Burr, President of the Santa Monica College, Kathleen Jeffries. Let's give a round of applause for all of the dignitaries. I'd also like to take a moment to ask my fellow board members to please stand for a moment so that we may thank you for your dedication to our mission and for your stewardship of our institution. Holocaust Museum LA board members. A heartfelt thank you to the 2Gs and 3Gs, children and grandchildren of survivors, docents, volunteers, and generous donors for joining us today. Several of our board members and 2G communities are currently representing Holocaust Museum LA at March of the Living in Poland, so they're not with us here today, but we want to thank everyone. I also want to thank our community partners, ADL Los Angeles, the American Jewish Committee, the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles, the Jewish Public Affairs Committee of California, Stand With Us, the USC Shoah Foundation, and last but not least, a very special thank you to Nicole and Alan Muchnick and Lorena Gonda for their generous support of this year's Yom HaShoah ceremony. And before I introduce our great mayor, I also want to give another round of thank yous to our amazing staff who tirelessly come to work every day to educate our future generations. They are the lifeblood of what we do here, and we could not do it without them. I'd like to now welcome our great mayor, Karen Bass, whose office has been a great partner of the museum and has supported our mission and our Building Truth expansion project. As you can see behind us, the museum broke ground in November on the new Jonah Goldrich Education Campus that will allow us to keep survivor voices alive, increase our visibility, and amplify our reach and impact. We will be able to increase our visitorship to $500,000 annually, including 150,000 students. And we couldn't have done this without the partnership of the City of Los Angeles and our great mayor. So thank you very much, Mayor Karen Bass.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that kind introduction. And let me just say that that partnership will continue until the museum is completed. Today we gather not only to mourn the 6 million Jewish souls who perished in the Holocaust, but also to reaffirm our commitment to ensuring such atrocities never, ever happen again. The City of Los Angeles prides itself on its diversity and the strength that it brings to our community. It is our collective responsibility to foster an environment where all people can live without fear and where respect and understanding bridge the gaps between us. As your mayor, I stand firmly against antisemitism and any form of hatred or discrimination. And it's not just, I don't just say that in my professional capacity, I say it in my personal capacity as an individual who grew up in Los Angeles, who went to Jewish schools, and I'm of the generation where my friends' parents were Holocaust survivors, and I saw tattoos from a very early age. My office is dedicated to an understanding amongst all Los Angeles residents, reinforcing the ties that bind us in mutual respect and shared commitment to harmony. To this end, I want to reaffirm my commitment to the Jewish community. Its safety, dignity, and freedom are integral to the health of our entire city. My administration is committed to working closely with Jewish organizations, community leaders, and law enforcement to enhance security measures and ensure that Los Angeles remains a place where the Jewish community can thrive without fear. We are approaching a time when living witnesses of these atrocities will no longer be with us to share their stories. This reality makes our responsibility clear. We must continue to push back the advances by some in our country who are trying to rewrite our textbooks to blur the historical record. We must educate our children and our children's children about the path, the horrors of the past, not to dwell on the darkness, but to light a path toward understanding, empathy, and vigilance. Holocaust Museum LA stands as a beacon of memory and education. It challenges us to remember the victims, honor the survivors, and learn from the past. It encourages us to reflect on the moral obligations that come with knowledge and to act against injustice, prejudice, and indifference in all forms. Let this sacred day of remembrance renew our commitment to human dignity and strength. Let it strengthen our resolve to fight against antisemitism and all forms of hatred. We must honor the memory of those who were lost, and let us also draw strength from their legacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bass, for those inspiring words. It is now my honor to introduce to you the Consul General of the State of Israel, Israel Bachar.
Good morning. On behalf of the State of Israel, I would first like to honor and recognize all of our survivors who are here with us today. You are a national treasure. You are an inspire for all of us. And you are our heroes. Your stories are important, and we must not let the world forget. Before I took my post, I visited Yad Vashem with my family. What strikes me every time when I visit a museum is the industrial efficiency of death the Germans created. On my last visit, I learned about Belzec, a Nazi extermination camp of just 300 square yards. In this tiny area, over 500,000 Jews were murdered from March 17, 1942 to June 1943. It was the third deadliest extermination camp, exceeded only by Treblinka and Auschwitz. In this factory of death, 20 to 30 German SS soldiers operated a camp with hundreds of Jewish prisoners. In the end, only 7 Jews performing slave labor with the camp's Sonderkommando survived World War II. Israeli historian David Silberklang writes that Belzec, and I'm quoting, was the place most representative of the totality and finality of the Nazi plan for Jews. End of quote. Unfortunately, the same anti-Semitism that fueled the Holocaust is raising its ugly, vicious head again. Make no mistake, the hatred of Jews that triggered the Holocaust is the same hatred that brought us to the horrific massacre of October 7th. If you watch the IDF film, Bearing Witness, you saw the unbridled joy of killing Jews because they are Jews. In the 1940s, we had a systematic state-run murder of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime. And on October 7th, we had a live streaming of the massacre of Jews by Hamas. Since the attack of October 7th, anti-Semitism has increased by 400% in America. This past year saw the highest rate of anti-Semitic acts in the history of this country. There is no nation or people that has suffered more oppression, expulsion, slavery, or the threat of annihilation than the Jews. We are not the oppressors. Now is the time to show up, stand up, and speak out against Jew hatred. Jew hatred changes its form in every generation. Today, anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism. Don't let the state of Israel be the scapegoat for anti-Semitism. We will not and should not rationalize this old hate. It is abhorrent, unacceptable, dangerous, and we must fight it wherever we find it. Surrender is not an option. I stand before you today as a proud Israeli diplomat. I and my generation had the great fortune to be able to grow up as Israeli Jews, strong in our identity. But nothing influenced that identity and allegiance to Israel more than the Holocaust. It defines who we are as Israelis and our commitment to the survival of the Jewish people. We feel the heavy load of our 6 million brothers and sisters who were murdered. As of today, we have not yet rebounded from the tragic loss of 6 million Jews. There are still less Jews in the world than before the Holocaust. But we have rebounded by creating an independent, democratic, Jewish state. And we have looked to our brave survivors for the inspiration to thrive. I'm here to tell you, the state of Israel is resilient and will continue to fight back against our enemies. And they will not succeed to destroy our national home, ever. This is our vow to you and to future generations from the State of Israel. And I would like to end with a Kohanim priestly blessing that has been recited for 3,000 years. יברכך אדוני וישמרך. יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. ושמו את שמי על בני ישראל ואני אברכם. May God bless you and safeguard you. May God make his countenance shine on you and be gracious to you. May God turn his face towards you and grant you peace. And may they connect my name with Israel and I will bless them. Am Israel Chai.
My name is Beth Keene, and I am the CEO of Holocaust Museum LA and the proud granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. It is truly moving to see what an incredible turnout we have today. And I know Jonah Goldrich would be so proud, and I imagine him looking down with a big, wide smile right now. Thank you so much to Mayor Karen Bass and General Counsel of Israel, Bauer, for your powerful remarks today. I also wanted to acknowledge our former great supervisor, Zev Yaroslavsky. Zev, please stand. I saw you earlier. There you are. And Paul Koretz is also in the crowd, our former city council member. The two of them have been longtime strong allies and partners of this museum. We wouldn't be where we are today without their support. Zev, you were here from the very beginning, so it's very nice to see you. We are so lucky to live in LA, where our leaders recognize the significant role our museum plays in our community. As we gather here on public land in Pan Pacific Park, you can see the important position our museum holds in Los Angeles. And as you look ahead, behind me, to the side, you will see the beginnings of our expansion project, and we would not be under construction without the vital help from Mayor Karen Bass and Councilwoman Yaroslavsky, who will be speaking in a little bit. We are proud to work with the two of you, as well as our other city, state, and national elected officials, to continue combating anti-Semitism and hate in our community and beyond. On this solemn day of remembrance, we are gathered to commemorate the 6 million lives lost, honor our beloved, resilient survivors, safeguard the truth, and reflect on how we can all play a role in standing up and speaking out against hate and anti-Semitism. This year, Yom HaShoah is different. 211 days ago, Holocaust survivors were among those brutally murdered by terrorists because of their identity. Shlomo Mansour, an 86-year-old survivor of the Farhud, is the oldest hostage still in captivity. Anti-Semitism is rising at unprecedented levels. Jewish people across this country don't feel safe. My grandparents' voices are echoing in my ear. It can happen again, even in America. When I was younger, I thought this was absurd. Now I regret being so dismissive. Survivors in our community are telling us they never thought they'd see this again in their lifetime. I think about the 132 hostages still in captivity and hope that their strong and enduring Jewish spirit that we know from our survivors helps them endure. The alarm bells are ringing loudly. We know that education is the way forward. Holocaust Museum LA is at the epicenter of articulating the truth, bringing diverse students together, and being part of the solution. Our museum's founding survivors had the courage and foresight to create a memorial at a time when the community was by and large not ready to face this chapter in history. More than 6 decades later, our mission to commemorate those who perished, educate future generations about the Holocaust, and inspire a more respectful, dignified, and humane world remains more important than ever. From May 15th through July 8th of 1944, parallel to the D-Day landing, Hungarian officials, at the direction of German SS officials, deported nearly 500,000 Jews from Hungary to Auschwitz-Birkenau. While Nazi Germany and its allies were losing the military war and facing 2 fronts, They prioritized their genocidal aims of murdering Jews. As American and Canadian troops were taking hold of Normandy beaches, 75% of Hungarian Jews deported to Auschwitz were murdered in the gas chambers upon arrival. We will have the honor to hear from Hungarian-born Auschwitz survivor Mary Bauer in a little while. This year marks the 80th anniversary of these deportations and murders. It reminds us of the continued importance of standing up in the face of identity-based violence. We know where hate can lead when left unchecked. We see how anti-Semitic rhetoric leads to violence. This is why we must speak out when we hear Jew hatred and chants of "from the river to the sea," advocating for the elimination of the Jewish state. And there is only one solution: Intifada revolution. Such denial of the right of the Jewish people to self-determination not only constitutes clear manifestations of anti-Semitism, but is discourse that is perpetuating violence. Many people who thoughtlessly scream these words don't understand their origin, and therefore their actual meaning. Together, each year on Yom HaShoah, we renew our commitment to ensure the preservation of survivor experiences and to teach and engage with students and the public in ways that empower them to speak out and stand up against identity-based violence. Through my work, I am fortunate to continue to honor my own legacy, sharing stories about my grandparents, Rose and Arnold Rakoshinsky, and how their acts of bravery in Auschwitz, Ravensbrück, and numerous labor camps taught me about humanity and compassion. Hate is learned, but so is kindness. Our gathering today stands as an embodiment of our collective hope for peace. It serves as a poignant testament to our enduring belief in the power of learning, connections, and community to transcend boundaries, foster unity, and move to a more just and humane world. It is now my pleasure and a personal honor to introduce our keynote speaker, my dear friend, Rabbi Steve Leder, the senior rabbi of Wilshire Boulevard Temple. Rabbi Leder has been my family's rabbi for over 25 years and officiated at my children's bar and bat mitzvah. I've always found his personal stories inspiring and comforting. He's an outspoken activist, and we thank him for his constant leadership and guiding voice during this challenging time.
Well, in true rabbinic fashion, before I speak, there are a few things I want to say. Especially to you, Beth, who has taken this, not only this museum, but this cause to a new level. And we've never needed that more. So I'm very proud of you, and I was so happy to sit next to your very proud mom. And just a moment of personal privilege. Would all the Wilshire Boulevard Temple members here please stand up? I want to see, stand up if you're from, look at that. That's beautiful, beautiful. The rest of you, there's plenty of room on the bus, okay? Just saying. So there's a theory of journalism called the view from nowhere, meaning that journalism is at its best when the reportage is made in a fashion that would never, ever reveal the beliefs and proclivities of the journalist, as if they came from another planet and landed on Earth. This is called the view from nowhere. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. We all come from somewhere. And I think the world and journalism would be better if before any report, the journalist simply told us where he or she or they come from. Let me tell you where I come from. My family was in America long before the Holocaust. Nevertheless, I too, like many of you, I am a second-generation survivor because the trauma of the Holocaust is in my DNA. I come from being seated in my synagogue's auditorium during Sunday school when I was 11 years old, being shown Night and Fog. It was the first time I saw grainy black and white footage of emaciated bodies being bulldozed into pits. I was 11. I come from being assigned Elie Wiesel's Night for my bar mitzvah class. Reading it in my tiny basement bedroom on a dark and cold Minnesota winter night, I realized he was not much older than I. This could have been me. I come from a father who often took me into our backyard and reminded me, Stephen, you see that tree over there? Just to the right of it, there are gold coins buried in case we ever have to make a run for it or buy bread. The Holocaust metastasized to my American family, making every Jew I knew a victim and a survivor. That is where I come from. And I am deeply honored to be here with all of you. All of you, especially the true survivors in your beautiful families. We know October 7th, the college campuses, the news, the spineless, morally confused trustees, presidents, faculty, and students are all the newest chapter in a very old story. We know the Babylonians threw Jewish babies off of cliffs 2,700 years ago. We know the ancient Romans flayed the skin off of Rabbi Akiva with an iron rake because he refused to cease teaching Torah. We know they wrapped Rabbi Hananiah in a Torah scroll and then set it on fire. We know they placed wet wool on his chest so the burn would be slower and the suffering prolonged. We know his disciples begged him, Rabbi, open your mouth, inhale the smoke so that you will die more quickly. And we know he refused. We know 500 years ago the Spaniards burned Jews at the stake if they refused to convert. We know the New York Times reported a pogrom in Kishinev almost 120 years to the day, saying the general cry, kill the Jew, was taken up all over the city. The Jews were taken wholly unaware and were slaughtered like sheep. Babies were literally torn to pieces by the frenzied and bloodthirsty mob. At sunset, the streets were piled with corpses and the wounded. We know. And of course, we know about the world remaining mostly silent as Nazis murdered 6 million Jews, beaten, raped, executed, and gassed 1.5 million children turned into smoke. Smoke. And actually, it is wrong to say or to think that 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust, because the truth is, one Jew died 6 million times. Each person was a unique miracle born out of love. Each had a family and gifts for the world and dreams ending in fear and pain. So much fear and pain. 23 days ago, Iran attacked Israel. The fact that they failed does not mean they were bluffing. 80 years ago, our enemies brought Jews to the ovens. Today, our enemies want to bring the ovens to the Jews on the tips of missiles. We feel abandoned by so many right now. Where are you? Where are you, we wonder? We marched with you. We supported you. We reached out to you. We allied with you in your fight for dignity and justice. Where are you? And it pains me to say this, but whether we knew it or not, we were marching for others and their causes on what was and is mostly a one-way street. The truth is that most people are a lot better at virtue signaling than they are at behaving with virtue. The woke are in a deep, immoral coma when it comes to us. On Rosh Hashanah, 3 weeks before the massacre, and I have never been sorrier in my life to be right, I said to our congregation, we often think of life as a series of good and bad choices, followed by a series of good and bad results. But for the Jewish people, life sometimes offers us not good or bad choices, but bad and worse choices. Golda Meir put it this way: if we have a choice between being dead and pitied or alive with a bad image, we'll take the bad image. Yes, her point lacks nuance. So does mine. Israel's choices are not always so binary, but right now, they are. Menachem Begin was right. He was asked about the lessons of the Holocaust, and he said the world will never pity slaughtered Jews. And he was also right when he said the world may not necessarily like the fighting Jew, but the world will have to take account of him. So while others may be confused, let us be morally clear. There is a difference between murder and killing. Hamas murders Jews, and murder forces us to kill, even when innocent people die in the process. They are not victims of Israeli aggression. They are the victims of the terrorists' total disregard for life itself. None of us have a choice. We have no choice but to reject the rejectionist ideology of Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad and Islamic Brotherhood and Qatar and Iran, an ideology that cares not about Palestinians and not about peace, only dead Jews, only blood. And this all hurts so much. This is all so heartbreaking. But there is real power in a broken heart. The rabbis explained it this way. There's a verse in Jeremiah that says, God places God's words upon our hearts. Now, the rabbis ask a really interesting question. Why? Why upon our hearts? Surely, if God has the power to place words upon our hearts, then God has the power to place words within our hearts. Wouldn't that be better? And then the sages answer, God places words upon our hearts because it isn't until our hearts are broken that the words can enter. It's true. There are some things that can only enter our hearts when pain cracks us open. Beautiful things, like how much we all need each other. Our truest friends, our allies, and the stranger sitting next to us in shul who is no longer a stranger at all, who is our brother and our sister, our comfort and our hope. We know we need each other now. The good people in our lives, and there are many who are not Jews, who have reached out, who do care, who are morally clear. They have entered our hearts. And so too, a newfound faith in ourselves. Have you ever wondered why? And I know probably not, because you're not a geeky rabbi. Have you ever wondered why the Torah commands the Ner Tamid, the eternal light in the temple, to be fueled by Shemen Zait Zach, the purest of olive oil? Why? Because the rabbis observe when the olive is pressed, crushed, that is when it gives forth its purest, most beautiful light. I often say to people who are suffering when they come to sit with me in my study upon what I call my couch of tears, if you have to go through hell, do not come out empty-handed. Nothing is worth the suffering our people have and are enduring, but we must not allow it, while not worth it, to be worthless. Victory will come if October 7th and the shameful hate it has unleashed lead to a better, more united Jewish community, a more effective Jewish community. More Jews drawn in from the periphery to the core. More day schools, more summer camps, more nursery schools, more Shabbos, more family trips to Israel instead of Paris or Cabo or wherever else the hell we take our children. More love of God, more Torah, more Hebrew, and mostly more love for each other. We really need each other. And we are finding each other. And above all, Let those who seek to destroy our faith cause us to embrace that faith more fully now with all our heart, with all our soul, and yes, so too with all our might. And from whence does our might come? We choose life. We have always privileged life and goodness over death and evil. In our darkest hours of death and abandonment, we stand and we say Kaddish, a prayer that does not mention death even once. Instead, it speaks only of life and the greatness of God. A funeral cannot be held on Shabbat or a holiday, but a bris must be conducted, even on Yom Kippur. We celebrate life no matter what. Death can wait, but never life. The Jewish calendar marks only one major day, Tisha B'Av, for remembering the sadness of Jewish history. But there are dozens of holidays commemorating the joy of our history, the goodness of God and nature. And despite how we joke about our own proclivity to see the tunnel at the end of every light, we believe in goodness. Pu 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 ka'ain hara. This is told in one of my favorite Jewish jokes. This is a joke about the Jewish pessimist who says, "Oh my God, things could not be worse." And the Jewish optimist who responds, "Of course they could." There is so much good in the world. So much good. The High Holy Day prayer book reminds us that God remembers the good in each of us despite our mistakes. It also asks us to remember the good in each other and in the world. We're not blind to evil. It's just that Jews believe in the power of goodness to overcome evil. We choose life. There's a very obscure law in the Talmud that has always amazed me. It has to do with the blessing over the new moon at the beginning of each new month. The Talmud requires a blind person to bless the new moon. Why? Why would the sages require a person to bless something he cannot see? To affirm what is hidden. Lately, it's been very hard for us to see the world as good and decent. Fear and tears and sadness and anger blind us sometimes. And yet, we remain commanded by 3,000 years of what it means to be a Jew, to bless what we sometimes cannot see and to affirm what is sometimes hidden. In just 2 days, the new moon will appear again. So amid the confusion and the fog, be clear and remember that to be a Jew is never to lose hope for a beautiful end to the oldest of stories. What did the poet mean when he wrote that verse in the 23rd Psalm? Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. I think he meant to give us hope in our battle against fatalism, to tell us we can make peace with our enemies and with each other. Who could have imagined a Jewish nation rising from the ashes 3 years after Hitler's death? Who could have imagined a lasting peace with Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Sudan, Bahrain, and Morocco? Who could ever have imagined a potential peace, even a cold peace, with Saudi Arabia? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, says another verse in that powerful and poignant psalm, reminding us that somehow we walk through the valley of shadows together. We do not remain there forever. For what is a shadow, really, but proof of light? A shadow, no matter how long or how dark, cannot exist unless a powerful light is still shining. It is obstructed, but it shines. Hate is love obstructed, murdered even, but it is not love extinguished. Hate is not the end of hope, but the beginning of a battle, summoning each of us to a deeper faith, to clarity, to courage. It is a solemn oath to a more beautiful tomorrow. Every one of us here was born out of the deepest, most magical love of our parents, our people, our Torah, our God, our nation. It's all the stuff of dreams for better, for love, for peace. Never allow such dreams to be murdered. Never allow hope to die. No matter how deep and long the valley, no matter how dark the shadows, we surely will emerge again into the warmth and the light. And until then, let us be morally clear. Let us be strong. Let us be brave. Yehi shalom rabba min shemaya. May there be great peace in the heavens. V'chayim aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. And life for us and for all of Israel. Ve'imeru. Amen. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru, imeru, amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Please save a seat for me on the bus. You know, in my remarks right now, I was going to say, according to the script, thank you, Rabbi Leader, for that very powerful message. It's more than a message, it's for those powerful words. It's the words that brought us the message. And words in our tradition, in our history, have been the power that has led us. But there is also something very important in our tradition, in our history, that has accompanied us, the Jewish people, even in the worst of times, and that is music. And we are very fortunate today to welcome to the stage very special guest, Maestro James Conlon, and musicians from the Colburn School and the LA Opera. Let me introduce them to you, please. Singer Deepa Johnny, please join us. Adam Milstein and Jason Moon on violins. Nicholas Gehrig and Raphael Masters on viola. And Shangyu Meng Yejin Hong on cello. I hope I pronounced those right. Maestro Conlon will conduct a performance of Alexander Zemlinsky's, Mai Blumen überall. You will find the transliteration and translation of this piece in your program, along with more information about the composer, whose work was nearly silenced by the Nazis. So please welcome, for this very, very special and powerful message, not with words, but with music. Please welcome Maestro Conlon.
Good day to you all. I'm very honored to be here. As mentioned, I am the music director of the Los Angeles Opera. I am also the founder and artistic director of the Tsiring Conlon Initiative for Recovered Voices. What are recovered voices? They are the collective music of composers who were banned, otherwise suppressed by the Nazi regime during those terrible years. This is light at the end of the tunnel. It is, by being able to perform this today, is a candle of a metaphoric sense of lighting the way to the future, and I have the honor to work with these young musicians who will, of course, bring this into the future. Recovered voices is a term we created in LA Opera for any music that should have been, perhaps was, a part of the classical music tradition, but went off the radar of the world after 1933. Alexander Zemlinsky is only one of those maybe 70 composers, 100 composers, whose names became unknown, whose music was not performed. This is only one tiny piece by Alexander Zemlinsky, who fled the Nazi regime twice, once from Berlin back to his native Vienna, and once from Vienna to New York City, where he lived his last years on the west side of Manhattan. There is a moral, there is a artistic, and there is a historic reason to have their music performed not just once or twice as a symbol, but back where it belongs, for which it was written, and that is on the concert stages, the opera houses, the media, the recordings. That is where this music was written for, and that's where it should have been all this time. It is disheartening. That's the negative side, that 80 years, approximately 80 years after the end of those terrible times, that this music still remains largely neglected by many classical music institutions around the world. But it is very heartening to know that it is coming back, and that it is especially, I put my hopes in the younger generation. Alexander Zemlinsky wrote 3 magnificent psalms for chorus and orchestra. Would have loved to have performed one of them today for you, but it would require an orchestra of about 75, and a chorus could be any size. We couldn't fit, and it was not practical. So I found the smallest, most intimate piece that I could, that was written, we don't know exactly when, because it was never performed at the time, and for which, when I became aware of it in the 1990s and recorded it, we did not even have music on sheets. We had fax. We all played off, and I conducted off a fax that the publishers had found for us. Fortunately, it is now published and it is now performed. But it is a piece for string sextet, as you can see, and mezzo-soprano. The subject is a very personal poem written by a man named Richard Demel, who was a close associate of Arnold Schoenberg, of Alexander Zemlinsky, and who was a poet who lived and died 1920, who devoted a lot of his work to the underprivileged. And so I thought that was a quiet, non-sensationalistic way to express all of the feelings that must be accompanying you, me, and all of us as we've heard these eloquent words said before us. And I agree. I can't speak like that, but we can make music, and that's what we will do for you. Thank you very much.
It's hard to imagine, but I think through his music we have just heard the voice of Alexander Zemlinsky, the composer. His music has just spoken to us. So thank you so much, Maestro Conlon and the musicians, for bringing us. And for supporting all those lost composers that we lost during the Holocaust, so that their voices can go on and being heard by us through the generations. It is now my pleasure to introduce, and it's kind of like, for me, it's going back to the days when I used to introduce your father. And I think he's sitting here and shepping nachas. You all know what that is. It's my pleasure to introduce Councilwoman Katie Yaroslavsky. Please join me.
Thank you, Mike. And for the record, Zev is my father-in-law. I'm married to his son, David. So it's an honor, truly, to be with you all here to commemorate Yom HaShoah once again and to share this space with survivors and your families. So much has happened in the year since we last gathered to mark this day, and in so many ways the world feels entirely different in one short year. Last year, when I spoke at this event, I talked about the terrifying rise in anti-Semitism we all did, that we were seeing all over the country. Last year, about this time last year, my now 9-year-old, came home in tears after learning about the Holocaust in school. He wanted to know if it was going to happen again. Last year, it was really much easier for me to tell Gabriel that it would never happen again. No one could have predicted what was to come. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge the pain that all of us are carrying and have been carrying for so long as Jews, as people raising children who are Jews in this world. The pain we carry when we think about the suffering of our ancestors and the survivors with us today that they endured during the Holocaust is significant. And our collective pain over the horrors from October 7th has only grown in the 7 months since. our anguish over the more than 100 hostages who remain in captivity, and the deaths of tens of thousands in Gaza. It's almost too much for us to bear, and yet here we are. At such a challenging moment, we're compelled to draw upon our people's experience to find the courage and resilience we need right now to come together, to keep everyone, to keep each of us and all of us safe, and to not allow ourselves as a people to be torn apart. The Holocaust wasn't just a moment in our history. It was and continues to be a dire warning of what happens when hatred goes unchecked and when we turn away from each other's humanity. And that's why the work of the Holocaust Museum LA is so important every day, but especially right now in this moment. So I want to thank you for doing this work, for expanding and continuing to grow at such a hard moment to be forging ahead. Over the last 7 months, we've all borne witness to the terrifying rise in antisemitism and extremism that's only deepened those wounds that we all are carrying. We've seen the unacceptable pain and fear of Jewish students targeted on college campuses across the country simply for being Jewish. We watched in shock last week as pro-Palestinian protesters at UCLA, my alma mater, were attacked. The Holocaust taught us that the ultimate consequences of unchecked hate, of the danger when we allow ourselves to see people as others, not as individuals. The Holocaust showed us what happens when humanity fails to intervene against bigotry and extremism. The echoes of this past have to guide us in confronting our challenges today. We're also reminded that for every voice that calls for division, there are so many others that are insisting upon compassion and conversation and understanding, which sounds naive, but I don't think it is. This is where we will find hope. Today, we're called to speak out against anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry, not only because they are attacks on the Jewish community, which they are, but because they are affronts to all humanity, to each of our humanity. The promise of never again isn't just about preventing another Holocaust, though it most certainly is about that. It most certainly is about that. It's about building a world where such atrocities can never happen to anyone, anywhere. This requires us to reach across the divides of fear and mistrust, which is really hard right now, to listen to the stories of others and to share ours, to insist that ours are heard. When there's so much noise and so much hate and so much anti-Semitism, it is really hard. To work not just towards tolerance, but towards a community of mutual respect and understanding, both within our Jewish community and outside of it. Like I said, this work is particularly hard right now, but that's when it's most needed. We belong to each other, and our safety is tied up in each other's safety. And so this Yom HaShoah, I hope that we can recommit ourselves to this mission, to be the light in the darkness, which is so needed right now, to do it together as a community united in memory, in hope, and with the resolve necessary to ensure that never again truly means never again, and that when we tell our children, of course not, it could never happen, that we mean it. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for honoring the memories of the 6 million people who were lost. It's hard to be here, but it's my honor and privilege. Thank you.
And now for our candle lighting ceremony, I would like to invite the following individuals for our candle lighting ceremony, where we'll light 6 candles in memory of the 6 million who perished. Please wait with your applause until they're all on stage. Lighting the first candle are Hungarian-born survivors Eva Nathanson, Mary Bauer, Dr. George Bercy, Eva Bretler, Erica Fabian, Stephen Koveri, and they were all in honor of their many family members and friends who did not survive. For the honor of the second candle, Holocaust Museum LA Teen Board members, Leila Feuerstein, who is co-chair of the Teen Board, and third generation Alessandro Giuda Ormani, who is here today with his grandmother. Lorena Gonda will light the third candle in honor of her parents, survivors Susan and Leslie Gonda, as well as the many Hungarian Jewish families and members who were deported to the concentration camps. Second generation Sandra Gerson Kanziger and Sylvia Deutsch will light the fourth candle. Co-chairs of our docent volunteers, Patsy Palmer and Jen Solomon, will light the fifth candle. And Assistant to LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, Rachel Fox, and former Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky will light the last candle. While they are gathering, we'd also like to remember the survivors in our community who passed this year. Regina Hirsch, Vera Hertz, Joshua Kaufman, Sesha Kingston, David Lenga, Sam Newberg, Joe Neustadt, Fred Ostrovsky, Robert Reto, Michelle Rodri, Albert Rosa, Anne Signet, Toby Tambor, and Anne Woods. May their memories be a blessing.
For the lost generation of 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered and never given the chance at a full life.
For the survivors whose testimony ensures that we never forget and whose wisdom and resilience inspire future generations.
For the countless unnamed Jewish victims, Ashkenazi, Sephardic, and Mizrahi, across Europe, North America, and the Mediterranean basin, whose names we do not know, and for the thousands of vanished communities that existed for centuries, who have left to light a candle for them.
Survivors and hostages of October 7th, and for those impacted by anti-Jewish violence.
2,500 Holocaust survivors were directly impacted in Israel on October 7th, and tens of thousands are experiencing ongoing traumatic impact.
Let me get up here for a second. For the courageous Jews and the non-Jewish rescuers, the righteous among nations, those who risked or gave their lives to save others.
And I'd now like to introduce to you the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, Amy Conroy, who is an active volunteer in the museum's Descendants of Remembrance program to share her family's story and stewarding their legacy.
Hi, I'm Amy Conroy, and I'm the granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors. I stand before you to make a pledge. I will use my voice, my strength, and forever speak up to the Jewish people. My grandparents, Al and Regina Kleiner, Nate and Tony Rosenblatt, were a big, huge part of my childhood and were there for every one of my special moments. I was born and raised right here at Cedars-Sinai. I loved going to Fairfax Flea Market to buy used jeans and then getting sprinkle cookies from Diamond Bakery around the corner right afterwards. During my childhood, my grandfather, Nathan Rosenblatt, who both of his children are here today, my aunt and my dad, shared stories of horrors he endured in Auschwitz. He did so in order to make sure that one day my generation would ensure that the atrocities never happened again. For 1 minute, let me take you back to 1937, to Lodz, the city my papa was from. Try and picture those cobblestone streets, the architecturally stunning stone buildings, bustling with merchants, the smell of the homemade pierogies, the sweet pastries, and of course, the sausage and sauerkraut. While you are strolling along the beautiful streets, you see men in white doctor's coats walking to and from their offices, tailors, architects. You pass the city's beautiful dance halls and community gathering spaces. Lodz was a thriving epicenter of Jewish life, just like we seem to be here in Los Angeles. My papa's typical day would be watching his dad make the journey to and from his tailor shop, selling exquisite fur coats to the affluent of the world. Meanwhile, he and his older sister, Tamara, would attend school. During the weekends, he would spend hours playing soccer in the neighborhoods. My papa's time in grade school, he attended a private school where most of his classmates were not Jewish. Papa was a very strong student, always ahead of his class. He loved to study and excelled. Everything was normal until one day he started receiving lower grades for the same test scores his non-Jewish friends were receiving. He was working so hard in class, but it didn't matter. His teachers would not advance him. They kept him behind. This was the beginning of his experience with significant anti-Semitism. It was an ugly time and kept getting uglier and uglier until one day the knock occurred. And Papa and his family were forced into the Lodz ghetto. Days were long, months turned to years, and shortly Papa was forced by the Nazis and the barking German shepherds to Auschwitz, starving to death. Grasping onto any source of life and food he could, one day his barrack mate saw potato peels laying on the corner, a pile of trash, and grabbed one of those potato peels. Within minutes, the Nazis saw him and rounded up the entire group and took him out into the forest on the side and said, "Here's your shovel. You're going to dig 2 feet wide by 4 feet long." We all knew what he was digging. Papa said it took him hours and hours because the ground was so hard, it was as hard as rocks. Papa said within seconds, he knew something, he had to say something. So he said in German to the Nazi, "Your dog is starving." And the Nazi said to him, "You filthy Jew, then take my dog to the kitchen and go give it food." So Papa took the German shepherd to the kitchen, and within minutes, the Jeep came with the Nazis and said, "Get in the car, we're going back to the camp." Papa had heard the gunshots and knew his fellow mates were in the ground. Papa's life went from childhood bliss to enslaved in a death camp, all because the world stood silent for the Jewish people. And here we are in 2024. It's happening fast, and the world is silent, and I'm scared. Just a few nights ago, my niece Alexis, a student at UCLA, reached out to me because she felt unsafe on her own campus. She was anxious. She had decided to stay in her dorm room all day, as walking on campus did not feel secure for a Jewish student. Despite my attempts to reassure her and encourage her to stay strong, I found myself grappling with my own feelings of unease. That night, I hurried to her side, bringing her and her 3 friends to our home to remove them from the unsettling environment. As the evening progressed, they decided that returning to UCLA was too daunting for Jewish students. So instead, they slept on my couch. It was a moment for me, almost like reliving the stories my grandparents used to tell me. I kept reassuring these 4 UCLA girls that we will get through this and be okay. But inside, I'm honestly scared. However, I refuse to let the shadow of anti-Semitism cast on another generation without standing up against it. We are here to show the world we are strong, and we are not going anywhere. We are loud and we are proud, and we won't be silenced. I know where I came from, and I know who I am. I am the granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Priscilla Schneider, who was born in Budapest, honors her parents, who were Holocaust survivors, by volunteering as a museum docent and sharing her family's story. Please welcome Priscilla Schneider.
Well, hello, my name is Priscilla Schneider, and I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley suburb of Los Angeles. I'm here today with my son Ryan and my granddaughter Skylar, and it's been a lovely life living here. But I was born Takács, in Hungarian, the last name comes first, Piroska Veronika, in Budapest, Hungary, the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors. As you enter the museum, under the Tree of Testimony are displayed a few photographs of my family. One is of my paternal grandparents, Fleischner, Béla, and Piroska, whom I never met. They lived in the city of Győr, Hungary, owned a tailor shop, and had 9 children. My father, András, of blessed memory, was the 6th of those 9. Another photo is of my mother, Eva, of blessed memory, with her family at a wedding in 1933 when she was 12. Among them, my grandparents, Klein, Aladar, and Ilona, whom I never met. Everyone in that photograph is related to either the bride or groom, the groom, my mother's cousin. This weekend, Hungary is commemorating the 565,000 Hungarian Jews killed in the Shoah. 424,000 of whom were transported to their deaths in Auschwitz in just 56 days in 1944. When we speak of losing 565,000 Hungarian Jews, or 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, or 1,200 Jews tortured and slaughtered last October 7th, those are large numbers, hard to digest. Over there is the Goldrich Foundation Children's Memorial, built to honor and remember the approximately 1.5 million Jewish children that perished in the Holocaust. Symbolically, over 1 million holes, varying in sizes, have been drilled, each hole representing a murdered baby, a murdered child. That is a large number, hard to digest. My father's parents and two of his brothers were among those 424,000 murdered in the Holocaust in 1944. And in that wedding photo of the 41 pictured, only 4 survived. My mother Eva, my grandfather Aladar, and my 2 uncles Gabor and István. Everyone else in that photo, including my grandmother Ilona, my uncle Imre, my great-grandparents, the bride and groom, and their 3 small children, of whom I have no photos, were murdered. 40 souls, killed for no reason but because they were Jews. Those people, those human beings, those individuals, 3 of my 4 grandparents, that is my family, and it's hard to digest. These losses, to those left behind, even generations later, leave deep scars that last forever. Those scars have led me on several journeys to Hungary and Europe, not only following in the paths of my parents' experiences, but searching out my own history, learning about where I was born and from where I escaped with my parents and brother, carried out as an injured baby after the failed Hungarian uprising in 1956, finally landing in America. It has led me to volunteer here at Holocaust Museum LA, where I've been leading tours for over 10 years in memory of my parents and lost family, each one a mitzvah. And to Poland and Israel with the March of the Living last year, following in the footsteps of my grandmother Piroska, after whom I am named. In Auschwitz, when we went through the gas chamber, I had this surreal experience, feeling as if my grandmother Piroska walked in there to her death, and 80 years later, I, her legacy, her granddaughter, named Piroska in her memory, walked out. Many of us who were on that trip are here today. And right now, a few of us who organized the trip last year are once more in Poland, leading this year's March of the Living, feeling that this march is more important than ever. Tomorrow, they will march from Auschwitz to Birkenau with thousands of people from around the world, symbolizing going from darkness to light and to illustrate the continued existence of the Jewish people despite it all. They will march for their families and for our families. They will march for the past and for the future, and they will march in remembrance of October 7th, in support of Israel, and with the determination to stand up against anti-Semitism, which is currently rearing its ugly head and roaring. This week, we witnessed an encampment at UCLA, my alma mater, where Jewish students were denied access to key areas on campus by the pro-Palestinian occupiers. Some students were denied because they refused to be anti-Zionists, and others were denied because they could be identified as Jews. This is way too familiar. We're not talking about Vienna in 1938, but today. The irony being that we are here to commemorate the tragedy of where such actions in the past have led. Let us hope that one day, such immoral and unethical acts will finally end up in the trash heap of history and never again really becomes never again. I am honored to stand here today representing the remnants of the Hungarian Jews transplanted in Los Angeles, remembering my parents, and acknowledging all my relatives, including my grandparents, whom I never met because they were murdered in the Shoah. But often, I have a dream, and that dream is, I wish I could have met. Thank you.
My name is Mary Bauer. I was born in Budapest, Hungary, and I was the only child of Moritz Izsák and Irene Kahan Izsák. My mother and I survived the Holocaust together, but at least 30, if not more, of my closely knit family perished. I guess I need my glasses. Before Germany invaded Hungary in 1944, my family and I lived in a loving, peaceful, happy life. I went to a public school with my neighborhood friends, and we were closely connected to both of the Jewish and the Christian communities. I had many non-Jewish friends, and some of my favorite childhood memories include going ice skating with friends in the wintertime. I was always invited back to their homes, and I really enjoyed their hot chocolate around the family Christmas tree during Christmas time. In return, we invited them and they came over to our house, and we celebrated together Purim. We girls liked to dress up. We were a community of Hungarians who just happened to be Jewish and Christian. My mother loved it when my friends came to our house. She laughed a lot and created a loving home open to everyone. I remember that even though she was strict, she wanted me to have fun. She did make me take the piano, but I hated practicing. To this day, I cherish my memories of my father. He was an educated, gentle person who took me hiking and fishing, and we went on vacations to the Tatra Mountains. He loved classical music and always helped me with my schoolwork and introduced me to my love of reading. He taught me about various different cultures, which actually shaped my significant part of my adult life. When I was growing up, minors were not allowed to go to the movies without an adult. In 1940, my grandmother took me to see a new American movie which just had been released in Hungary. It was not in black and white, it was in color. I was very excited about that at that time. It was filled with my heart-pounding excitement to see the Wizard of Oz. A newsreel played before each film, which is now, that's how we got our news of the world back then. We saw Hitler shaking hands with Mussolini. My grandmother grabbed my hand very hard and squeezed it. I felt fear, and I didn't understand why. At 13 years old, that was my first indication that something dangerous is looming all over Europe. Hungary and Germany were allies at the time, which meant Hungary could send thousands of Hungarian Jewish men into forced labor battalions to help out the Nazi Germans. Their lives didn't matter much, as the Hungarian German lives were more important. Therefore, they used the Jews to clear the landmines. Around 1942, my father was taken along with all the other Jewish men of his age to the Russian front. I remember as he was walking through the door, he hugged me and told me, "Be a good girl and write to me." I never saw him again. I had no idea how, where, or how and when he died. To this day, May 19, 1944, Germany invaded Hungary. The whole country welcomed them as they marched in. Seemingly overnight, I'm sorry. Seemingly overnight, the same friends who used to invite me in their homes turned away from me and turned away from their other Jewish friends as well. Within a few weeks of the invasion, we were told that all Jews had to wear a yellow star. The next morning at school, I sat down in the class to my best friend. She looked at my star, and she shoved her elbow right into my ribs, and she said, "I don't want to sit next to a dirty Jew." Just yesterday, without the star, I have been a clean Jew. This is prejudice. Weeks later, we got another announcement that the Jewish students are no longer allowed even to attend any more public schools. And that was the beginning of the end of my life as I knew it. Hungary was the last country to be invaded, and everything happened what seems like a blink of an eye. Within 2 months, nearly 500,000 Jews were deported from Hungary. All Jews were ordered to vacate their homes, pack a suitcase, and go to a railroad station. They didn't tell us why, where, or how long we are going to go. All what they said, write your names and the place where you are living, your address of the suitcase. I couldn't pack my precious possessions. I grew up with my dolls, with my books, and with my records. How could I place it in a suitcase what I can carry? After a short stop, we were at a brick factory maybe for a day. We were sent to the railroad station and forced into boxcars, which were usually used for carry horses or freight. We traveled non-stop for days, women, men, pregnant women, children, teens, infirm people, older people, babies. We were packed together like sardines in a box. These boxcars had a bucket in a corner, and they told us, "That's your bathroom." My grandfather tried to comfort me. I was clinging to him. And he said, "Look, And he opened up his palm and he showed me his medals from the First World War. When they let us out, don't worry, I will show it to them and they will say, oh, you were honored as a Hungarian war hero, you can go home. When the train finally stopped and they opened the doors, we rushed out, gasping for a little fresh air. But the air smelled of smoke. We had no clue why. We had no clue where we are. We looked out, and the first sight was we saw German soldiers in beautiful, clean uniforms, shiny boots, holding German shepherds on a leash. There were several people wearing striped uniforms. We didn't know who they were. We had no clue. We had absolutely no idea that actually we just arrived to Auschwitz-Birkenau. There was so much commotion that I could not even turn around and say goodbye to my grandfather, who was very quickly lost forever among all the men who were separated in a different column from the women. I went with my mother and with my grandmother, but my grandmother was soon separated from us too. In a matter of weeks, they took our homes, possessions, families. They shaved our entire bodies, and we had to stand naked and waiting until we were tattooed. My new identity was A10, 10,860. My mother was one step in front of me. I remember how she was biting her lips because she knew I was watching her and she was trying to show me I have no reason to fear any pain. Throughout our time together in Auschwitz, we always supported each other and we encouraged each other. We saved each other's lives. At winter 1945, the Russians advanced. The Nazis sent us on a death march toward Germany in order to use us for slave labor. We marched through the winter of heavy snow, the guards shooting the ones who were too weak to walk. Some of us couldn't keep up. We marched to Grossrosen, and from there, on another cattle car, we continued to Ravensbrück. And then we were sent to another camp called Malchow, where in April 1945, we were finally liberated. We survived. I finally immigrated to the United States and arrived in December 7, 1951, on a troop ship, the very same troop ship that took the American soldiers to England for D-Day. I arrived at the port of New Orleans. I was excited to come to America. The land of liberty, freedom, equality. And what I have been through, I wanted to raise my children in a place like that. And America was offering free from racial, ethnic, religious prejudice. Unfortunately, in New Orleans, I witnessed firsthand racial segregation. My first American experience was very bitter. I found the same hate from which I was running. In that moment, I remembered that people in Auschwitz told me they were about to die, and they said, if you survive, tell the world about us. Tell about us. Tell what's happening here. I imagined that in America I would be able to tell people the ugly truth of prejudice. And I am in New Orleans facing prejudice. Since then, I remember the promise what I have made to my dying inmates. And therefore, I keep talking and teaching about what prejudice and hate means, particularly to the students at this museum, where I often speak to them. They are the future of the world. In their hand, they are holding the world future, our future, America's future. My hope is that by speaking at first-hand witness to my atrocities, they are a witness to me and will understand that we went through and can make changes needed to make sure that what happened to us will never happen to anyone else ever again because of their race, their religion, or their identity. They should realize how wrong it is when they look at me and hear me. Now I stand before you. I am very conflicted. I am deeply honored to be speaking to you today, yet wishing that this type of museums did not have to exist. Everyone born on this planet, regardless of skin color, ethnicity, or religious belief, they should have a right to live a free life of their choosing until the time when all governments unite toward the common goal of freedom, peace, unity for all people. Of this world, museums like this and new ones to come must stand as a reminder of what happens when we hate each other and then hate can take over. That's why the museum stands. That's what we are doing. And as long as I can talk and as long as I am able to stand up, I feel this is my mission of my survival, to make it so that the next generation will survive without the hurt and the pain that we went through. We had to march to Grossrosen and from there to another cattle car. I think I messed up my pages. Since then, I tried to keep the promise which I have made for all my dying inmates. It's very difficult. It's awfully difficult, especially today, because I have the fear in my country here. What I have felt at the time when my grandmother saw Mussolini and Hitler shaking hands, it's an uncomfort. I am so conflicted. I am deeply honored to speak to you today, and I am getting so emotional. It's so hard for me to continue. I have so much to say, and everybody said it before me. I thank you for being here, for giving me the honor to speak, especially today, because May is my birthday month, and I will be 97 years old in a few weeks. I am here to tell you, and you realize that I am here and you can watch me and hear me. Hate didn't win. I am the mother of 2 sons, the grandmother of 3 grandchildren. I won. We won. Love won. Thank you. Oh, I was looking for you.
Well, would you please join me in singing Happy Birthday to Mary Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mary. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Mary. We are so fortunate to hear your experience, and we all now bear our responsibility to preserve your memories and steward your message of courage and resistance. I'd now like to call upon former Los Angeles City Controller Ron Galperin, the son and grandson of Holocaust survivors, to recite the El Malei Rachamim and the Mourner's Kaddish prayer. Ron, please.
It's truly a great honor to be here, and particularly among the survivors. Thank you so much for carrying on the memory into the next generation and next generation after that, doing that. Today, of course, is Yom HaShoah, but it's also known as Yom HaShoah veHagvura, which means that it is also a day of not just remembrance, but also of bravery. And so we remember the horrors, the victims, the survivors, but we're also called upon to be brave, particularly at this time when we're seeing the rise of antisemitism, that we all have an obligation to speak out, to act, to be brave. I wish my father could be here with us today. He would have turned 103 years old 2 weeks ago, and we used to come each and every single year and sit together in this tent. He passed away 7 years ago at age 96, and I still feel his presence as I was sitting in here. He escaped Romania, made his way to Turkey, made his way to Syria, and then to Israel, and then finally to the United States. And now it's up to the next generation, my generation, and the next, to really keep all of these memories alive. So ledor vador, from generation to generation, I actually come from a long line of rabbis. My great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my father. The last thing I ever thought I would do was become a rabbi, but I did marry one. Being a rabbi requires being a little bit political, and being in public service and community service does require a little bit of faith, so they're kind of related to each other. I learned from my father the El Malei Rachamim, this prayer that we recite in memory of the 6 million precious souls whose lives were cut short. And tonight, we also remember all those who were killed, who were murdered on the 7th of October. So I'll ask all of you who are able to rise to please do so as we recite the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim שוכן במרומים, המצי מנוחה, מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את כל הנשמות של 6 מיליוני היהודים, חללי השואה באירופה, שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו ושנספו. לכן אבל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם. וינוחו בשלום על משכביהם, ונאמר Amen. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest in your divine presence to all the souls of our holy and pure brothers and sisters who we remember today, 6 million Jews, victims of the European Holocaust, who were murdered, slaughtered, burned, exterminated by the Nazis and their collaborators, and by the evil of anti-Semitism. May the souls of the departed be sheltered under the wings of the Eternal. May they rest peacefully, and let us say, Amen. And for those of you, I think probably almost everybody in this room, please join me as we recite the Kaddish. And as was said by Rabbi Steve Leder before, the Kaddish doesn't have the word death in it. It has life in it. And it's a really lesson to all of us that even as we face difficulty, as we face adversity, we embrace life. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, עגלה בזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקודשה בריחו. לאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם, ואמרו אמן. Thank you.
Before we end today's ceremony with a performance by the Jack Trio and the Partisan Song, I wanted to thank everyone again for joining us for Holocaust Museum LA's 32nd annual Yom HaShoah ceremony. We couldn't do this work alone, and I wanted to thank our community partners, the ADL, AJC, Jewish Federation, Stand With Us, Shoah Foundation, and JPAC. Thank you to my colleagues, Jeff Abrams, who is here, CEO of ADL Los Angeles, Rick Hirschstadt, CEO of AJC Los Angeles. We can't do this work alone, and it means so much to be able to work together with these guys, so thank you. Thank you to everyone here for making today a priority and for showing up. This is the light in the darkness. And on behalf of everyone at Holocaust Museum LA, I want to say a huge thank you for that. I want to thank Mike Burstein. Where's Mike? You're booked for next year. Thank you. Save the date. I want to give our Chief Program Officer, Jen Maxey, and our incredible staff a huge shout out for all of their hard work for today. I want to thank Nicole and Alan Muchnick and Lorena Gonda for their generous support for today's program. Thank you. I also want to remind everyone, please take a memorial candle to light at home. Each is wrapped with the personal details of one of the 6 million individuals who perished in the Holocaust. Please also take a flyer so that you may light a digital candle created by our board member, Stephen Greinberg. Illuminate's goal is to educate and commemorate by teaching 6 million people lighting 6 million candles. Please welcome to the stage for the Jack's performance. Please welcome to the stage Janice, Jennifer, Cersei, Lily, and Christine for a musical performance. And followed by that, we will have Holocaust survivor Henry Slucky will lead us in the Partisan Song to conclude our ceremony. The Yiddish Partisan Song became an anthem of spiritual resistance in ghettos and camps during the Holocaust. You'll find the translation and transliteration in the program. In past years, Henry was joined by David Lenga, who led us in the Partisan Song. David sadly passed away this year, so please, let's sing in David's honor. So thank you again, everyone, for being here today. And with that,
We are going to conclude. I'm going to ask all the survivors to please join me on stage. Sag nicht einmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg. Gott Himmel Wein, verstehen Weg. Kommen weg nach unser ausgedenkte Show. Es wird ab heute unser Trocknen seinen Lohn. Kommen weg nach unser ausgedenkte Show. Es wird ab heute unser Trocknen seinen Lohn. Von grünem Palmenland bis weißem Land von Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unserem Wein, mit unserer Weg. Und wohlgefallen ist ein Spritz für unser Blut. Spritzen wird durch unser Wohle, unser Mut. Und wohlgefallen ist ein Spritz für unser Blut. Spritzen wird nach unser Wohle, unser Mut. Es wird die Morgen begilden unser Heim. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Fein. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne dem Jahr. Wie ab Parol, so ging das Lied von dort zu dort. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne der Jahr. Wie ab Parol, so ging das Lied von dort zu dort. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lied von Erfolgen und Frei. Das hat der Hut zwischen Frau und dicke Männer. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hände. Das hat der Hut zwischen Frau und dicke Männer. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes an die Hände. Das soll nicht gehen, als du gehst den letzten Weg. Als Himmel Bläue, verstehen Bläue Tag. Kommen weg nach unserer ausgebreite Show. Es wird abholt und unser Kopf ist eine Not. Kommen weg nach unserer ausgebreite Show. Es wird abholt und unser Trott wieder seinen Blut. Bis 120 Uhr. Oh May. Am Israel Chai. Thank you.